Now, talk about one of the great players that came out of Ipswich. Well, he didn't. Harold the H. Peacock-a-doodle-doo. It's got a really good yarn, and it's just the Slack family, again, and Slack's family.
Yes.
Way back, and it's about a record that has been forgotten about and stands for 137 years. How are you, Harold? This is very interesting.
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks, Danny. I may not have come out of Ipswich, but I'm in Ipswich right now. So I've got to give a shout-out to Pete at Brassel. We've got a research project going on. So I'm in Brassel right now, and good morning, Pete.
Hi there, Pete.
But the story, this is really interesting because I've been researching the last 3 weeks. The Slack family of Ipswich has got a mention, and this one, it's the world record that Australia forgot. And like you say, it's 137 years old. Now, on Thursday, the 20th of March 1930, the Ipswich-born Michael Joseph Slack, he died suddenly at the Red Bank Meatworks.
Right.
Now, he'd eaten a hearty meal early in the morning and appeared to be in the best of health. But while changing his clothes to start work, he collapsed and died.
Wow.
Now, he was just 62, so he's quite young. Slack was another member of a noted family, as you know, that had done so much to put Ipswich, Queensland, and indeed Australia on the map.
Wow.
Now, one of Slack's uncles helped convict a murder in Ipswich. Another claimed the first cricketing century in Queensland, while Slack himself was Australasian sculling champion.
And drinking?
But rowing.
Oh, fair enough.
Rowing, yeah. He was an athlete, but that wasn't Slack's biggest claim to fame.
What was
it? You see, he was a world champion, which is an honour that even his hometown seems to have forgotten. And his 137-year-old record still stands today. Now, in regards to his rowing, the Intercolonial Rowing Regatta was held on Friday, the 28th of May, 1892, and it was rowed on the Bulimba Reach of the Brisbane River. And the Slacks sculling event was rowed over 2 3/4 miles. Now, it was the first amateur champion sculls of Australia. Now, in the title race, Slack put on a magnificent spurt to win by 3 lengths, beating the crack scullers from down south. They thought they were crack anyway. In fact, the Victorians, they wouldn't even show up because Slack had gone down and beaten them earlier in the year, so they weren't going to get beaten again. Now, Slack's impressive list of titles would include the Sculling Amateur Championships of Queensland, Victoria, 3 times of Australia, and in 1895, the Amateur Championship of Australasia, because New Zealand were involved. Now, sport was amateur back then. To me, that's the glory days of sport when it was amateur. And so Slack had to follow his career as a butcher.
Right.
That's right, a butcher. Now, he was particularly efficient at his trade, and in 1889, at the old Ramornie Meatworks in South Grafton, he dressed a bullock in 4 minutes and 50 seconds. Now, this is a world record that has since never been beaten. That's right, dressing a bullock. And now we're not talking in clothes. We're talking ready for the table in 4 minutes and 50 seconds.
Dressing.
Now, if you're looking for dressing a bullock. Now, if you want to talk about bullock records, in 2023, Iceberg, which was a North Queensland bullock processed near Claremont, it was potentially Australia's largest ever ox, dressed out at 854 kilograms.
Wow.
But Slack's dressing world speed record, set in 1889, has never been challenged.
That is unbelievable.
It is. And look, look, there's pieces of history about him. I'll tell you about that too, because the knife with which he performed the feat was for many years in the possession of his brother, Patrick Slack. Now, he owned a butchery in Ipswich, and it was a licensee of the Red Bank Inn on the main Ipswich-Brisbane Road. Now, tragically, the knife was lost when the brothers' hotel burned to the ground in 1910. He had about 10 boarders, all employees at the meatworks, and they saved only what they were wearing at the time, except, that is, for a quantity of liquor that was rescued from the fire and deposited on the road. But I'm sorry to say that was pilfered later, so maybe the sculling came into play there. Now, Slack's rowing exploits aren't forgotten. At one time, while sculling in the Brisbane River, the blade of one of the sculls he was using was bitten in two by a shark. And as of 1930, it was still preserved in the Queensland Museum. Now, I've made inquiries to the museum to go see it, and I'm waiting to hear back from them now. So I'll let you know about that.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. And in fact, if Slack had lived for another decade, he might have shared in the fabulous estate of Mr. Charles Tyndall. Now, he was the owner and manager of the Ramornie Meatworks when Slack set his record there. Now, Tyndall's estate was valued at £142,000 or $60 million in today's money. And he left legacies and annuities to former employees.
Wow.
And there was no more famous former employee than Slack. So I reckon if he'd lived another 10 years, he would have got a few dollars there, and the Slack family would be happy today.
Well, I'll be seeing Slacky today, probably up at South. Souths are playing in there.
Well, ask him if any of that money came through, or has he got that shark-bitten blade or even the knife that set the record? I'd love to know any stories about that. But today it seems the Slack's butchering record, his world record, is forgotten. Now he's buried in South Brisbane Cemetery, and there's not even a hint that he still holds the record. So ask your mate Slacky when you're over in South, go to the cemetery in South Brisbane. Why isn't there a plaque there? And where's the knife and rowing blade?
Oh, come on, where is it? All right, well, listen, how do we find out about this wonderful story about Slacky, the Slack family?
Yeah, you can find history out there on all the socials, or most, all the main ones. I don't go into the funny ones, but you go and do YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, or you can go to my website, direct to my that links to all the Facebook and stuff, but historyouthere.com. That's a
historyouthere.com. I'll tell Slacky to look them up on historyouthere.com. In the last 3 weeks, we talk about the Slack family from Ipswich, and they're all great yarns, so go to historyouthere.com. Harold, it's always good to talk to you, always interesting, and we'll talk to you about this time next week, right here on West Bremer Radio. It's 8:21.